All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It's good to see you on this Monday. This Monday, the last day of, excuse me, last day of February 2022. I like my shirt. But good evening, everybody. Just want to thank you for coming in to the healing room. If this is your first time tuning in, I want you to take a moment. I want you to like this. I want you to share this. If something that I'm saying is being a blessing to you, I want you to take a moment. Excuse me, trying to get my little setup going. Here. But if something is blessing you, I want you to take a moment and comment. Usually with the healing room, we have times where we can ask questions. If this is really, really good to you, I want you to even go and tag a friend. Say, girl, this is so good. You have to go and watch this. You have to go and look at this and maybe reply and ask some questions of yourself. And also remember the goal overall is for us to heal together. That is the goal, for us to heal together. And how do we heal? I'm so glad you asked. We heal by having conversations. We heal by asking questions. We heal by being transparent, by being vulnerable. That's how we are able to heal. So earlier, if you saw my post, I was actually kind of debating if I should go live today, because I was like, I don't know if I have anything that I want to discuss, and I want to start maybe leaving it open for you all to inbox me any questions that you may have. But I was thinking, I don't know if I got anything I want to discuss today. Then I thought about a post that I posted. Um, wasn't this past weekend, maybe the weekend before. So about 2 weeks ago, I asked a question, and I appreciate those who were really courageous and brave and commented their thoughts. And for those who will also inbox me their thoughts, I really do appreciate it, and I'm really really grateful and thankful for you to get that feedback from you all. It was nice seeing what you had to say. So before I get started, I do want to let you know that these topics that I discuss, I'm not just discussing them just to be discussing them. These topics that I discuss, I actually have, and I want to make sure you all can hear me. Testing, testing. Yes, you all can hear me. But these topics that I discuss, not only because when we talk about the healing room, there is a lot of overlap between spirituality and mental health. And so I want you all to know that I'm not just a born again believer, spirit filled, who are passionate about these topics, but I am also a born again, spirit filled believer who has been trained and who has gone on 4 years of experience in the mental health field. And I say that because I want you all to know my level of expertise. So I don't know everything. There are some people that I personally work with who are colleagues who have, years of experience and who has worked heavily in a lot of different areas. So in mental health, I have worked. Well, first off, I'm a licensed master social worker. Those are my credentials at the bottom. I'm a licensed master social worker, and I am currently working on my clinical license. So I'm getting really close to the end of that process. Whoop, whoop, and I've been doing that process for going on 2 years. So I'm a licensed master social worker. I graduated in December 2015 with a bachelor's in social work from Mississippi State University. I went on to work a little bit. I worked in a hospital doing discharge planning. So that means people who were discharged who may have been high risk, um, helping them schedule their next plan for when they leave the hospital, whether that's rehab, hospice, or another type of level of care. And then I've worked in child protection services. We did that for about a year and a half. And then after that, I worked in hospice while I was getting my master's in clinical social work at the University of Mississippi. And then worked in hospice for almost a year. Then I interned as a children's mental health therapist. And then after interning as a children's mental health therapist, I was granted a position as an addiction therapist. So I worked with individuals who are in recovery. I worked in that field for about a year and a half. And then I um, now work at Mississippi State University Student Counseling Services. And I've been there for about 2+ years. So No, November of 2021 was made 2 years. So going on two plus years I've been it there. And so I've been able to work see children, adolescents, and adults. And I worked in geriatrics. I worked in those who were transitioning from this life to the next life. And so I've had a lot of different experience. So I just want you to know that these are not, when I talk about these topics, these are not things that I'm just pulling out of the air and looking up on Facebook. These are actual things that I've gone through training, and I've had this training, and something that I've been doing a lot of research in, and also researching the Bible, research as far as like just psychotherapy theories, all that, all those natures. I'm going to give you some basic information about mental health, therapy, all those things, because I want you to really be informed and have knowledge about the mental health field, because the mental health field is really broad. There is a array of professionals that work in the mental health field. So like I told you, I'm a licensed master social worker. And before I get into that, let me go ahead, and I want to encourage you to go to my website. Dun, dun, dun. My website is at the bottom, so please feel free to go to my website. Feel free to share this with somebody. If you are interested, I hear a lot of people say, hey, we need to have training at our church. We need to have training at our job about mental health and how to help somebody in mental health distress or mental health crisis or suicide crisis. We need training. If you are interested, you can go to my website. At the bottom, there is a little part where you can ask for or request services, so training. And so if you fill that out on my website, the information will go directly to my email, and I will contact you as soon as possible regarding your request. So I want you all to know that. So please check out my website. We also starting probably somewhere in the next month, we are going to go ahead and relaunch the When the Heart is Sick class. And that is just a master class. We did it at the beginning of January. And I believe that God really wants to utilize that information. It was so profound. I even was wondering if I need to reuse the recordings that we have or go live again each night, because God keeps giving me revelation regarding information. But anywho, be looking out for that. In March, we're gonna relaunch the When the Heart is Sick master classes. And what we did in January, we had a night where it was a free premiere, and we had it where you can register all the way up to the last day of classes. Because once you register for the classes, and I think registration was $30, and it would again be $30. I just believe in being fair. So once you register for those classes, then you'll have access to a private Facebook room called the Healing Room Masterclass. And of course, I want to have more master classes. I even thinking about having a class talking about being a healthy leader. Are you a healthy leader? Ooh, so that's heavy. But I do want to have more master classes. Um, and so I really want y'all to go on the website, check out the information. Of course, we are continuing to build the information. There's a nice little intro video there on there just for you when you first go on. So I want to encourage you to check it out. If you want any information, if you want me to come and do a training for your church, your job, whatnot, put that request in, and I will answer them accordingly. Okay. So again, if this is a blessing to you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to like. I want you to share. And I want you to comment. Comment if something is blessing you. Comment any questions. And then I want you to tag a friend. Remember, here in the Healing Room, our goal is to heal together. That is our goal. Our goal is for us to heal together. The word of God said, I pray above all things that you be in good health, that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. He didn't say spirit. He didn't say body. He said soul. And I think that's a very important, even just looking at that, I think it's very important to notice the specific word that he used for that. And a lot of times we think, well, your spirit man is part of your soul. Well, the soul is really more so part of the spiritual area or the spiritual aspect of us. So we're more spiritual than we think. And so, but we do have a body that we live in, and we have to interact with the environment with us. So your level of healthiness, that's a word, your level of healthiness as far as in your body and how you interact with the environment and those around you is based on how healthy your soul is. And so there's a lot of times we think mental and physical are completely separate and they have nothing to do with each other. Wrong. They have a lot to do with each other. And so tonight we're going to talk about a specific topic. Hello, beautiful Megan. And so again, I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining. So again, my name is Nakisha Fleming. I'm a licensed master social worker. And I want to thank you all. So I talked about earlier, I posted some things on my timeline. And I talked about basically mental health in the church. And I've shared a lot of the topics that I've discussed that kind of overlap and talking about our spirituality and our mental. So a lot of things kind of overlap. But I asked the question when I posted, is it the church's business? Is mental illness the church's business? And I want you to think about that question as I start this conversation. So let me get my tea together. I'm trying this new tea that my sister had gave me. It's called immunity tea, and it has like a bunch of little natural herbs in it. So I'm excited. It smells good. Mmm. And it's really, really good. Really, really good. Hello, beautiful people. Hello. So I want to give some. Let me put my phone right here. I want to give some basic information about the mental health field. So as I mentioned earlier, hey sis, hey Mika, I want to give some basic information about what about the mental health field. So these are different people who work in the mental health field because I feel like there sometimes can get a lot of confusion. So I'm a licensed master social worker. So that means I got my bachelor's in social work. Then I went and got my master's in social work. I had to get my master's degree in order to be licensed on a master's level. I have to have my license on a master's level in order for me to participate in the clinical side of me getting my clinical license. So that's a little bit about my field. My bachelor's degree took me 4 years. My master's degree, I entered into an advanced program and I got my master's. I was able to get my master's in 1 year, but most master's programs take up to about 2 to 3 years, just depending on which route they go. Then you have psychologists. Psychologists, and I think for most of these degrees, I could be wrong. I'm familiar with the field of social work, but I believe for most of these degrees, you can get a bachelor's in maybe a related field and then get your master's in this field. But I think the psychology program, I think it's encouraged for you to get a bachelor's in psychology. I'm not really sure. But then there's psychologists, and most psychologists have a doctoral degree or have a doctorate degree, which means they've got their bachelor's, their master's, and their doctorate degree. Okay. And when I become a licensed clinical social worker, which I hope is by the end of this year, when I become a licensed clinical social worker, I'll be able to have my own practice, but I will still not be able to prescribe medication. So I want you to hold on to that. Psychologists, they can have their own practice. So they can have their own practice, private practice, but they also cannot prescribe medication. So you probably wonder, okay, well, how can people prescribe mental health medication? So then you have a psychiatrist. Amen, Megan. I'm hoping to get that thing by the end of this year. So then you have a psychiatrist. So you have a licensed clinical social worker, then you have a psychologist, which licensed clinical social worker, licensed master social worker, psychologist, they both do psychotherapy. And psychotherapy is just talk therapy, where you come in, you talk to a professional who's been trained. That's what psychotherapy is. So I'm just breaking down these terms because we say stuff and sometimes you don't have to we say these terms, but they really just mean something basic. So psychotherapy is talk therapy. That's basically what it is. You go in, you just talk to a trained professional. Thanks, boo. My husband said, yes, you got it. Yeah, thank you, boo. I love the positivity. I'm loving it. And then a psychiatrist is an individual who also has possibly a background. And I do believe they have to go to get a doctoral degree as well. They have maybe background in mental health, but they can prescribe medication. So a psychiatrist can prescribe medication. Okay. Then you have a licensed professional counselor. Most of the time, a licensed professional counselor has a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then they have to go through a clinical process, just like me. I'm having to go through a clinical process where I'm having to get so many hours of supervision and so many hours of like face-to-face client contact where I'm getting my hours so I can apply to the board to take a test. Licensed professional counselors, they have to go through a clinical process as well, where they have to basically have this training, supervision, all that, and then they also go and apply. I think they take a test before they do their hours, and then I think once they do that, they may be done. But I don't take my test till after I complete my hours. So there are some differences in each professional. But a licensed professional counselor, they also provide psychotherapy, but they do not prescribe medication. So the only professional that I have mentioned so far is a psychiatrist that can prescribe medication. There are some family doctors that prescribe psychiatric medication, and then a nurse practitioners can prescribe psychiatric medication. I don't. This is just my opinion. I think if you're a family doctor, you need to have some type of level of training, background in mental health before prescribing medication. Because I just have seen it where there can be some challenges or some issues that arise from a family doctor prescribing psychiatric medication, especially if the client is um, dealing with maybe a mental illness that may be more severe. So I would just say that of that nature. So like if they're dealing with psychosis, which psychosis is maybe can include delusions, so believing things that are not actual true, or seeing things or hearing things, any type of hallucination. So there's visual and auditory hallucinations that could be in that mix. But anyways, so those are the professionals that are encompassing the mental health field. So you could be seeing a psychologist, you could be seeing a licensed clinical social worker, which is me. You could be seeing a licensed professional counselor. You could be seeing a I don't know if psychiatrists do provide psychotherapy or talk therapy. I think they can, but the only psychiatrist that I've met when I was working in addiction therapist, I don't believe he prescribed or he provided psychotherapy. I think for him, it was just he evaluated clients and wrote prescriptions. So, um, but yeah, so there's a lot of different fields that encompasses mental health, and I hear this a lot too, and I want to clear this up because it really just it irks my nerves. A lot of people use the word, well, Sigmund Freud this, Sigmund Freud that. Sigmund Freud is not the only individual who has contributed to the mental health field. Sigmund Freud was a neuroscientist or a neuropsychologist, I believe, and he created what we call psychoanalysis, which is a type of psychotherapy. So I believe he contributed to that portion. But there's so many different types of psychotherapy that providers use. So Sigmund Freud, just really his name, Sigmund Freud, he's not the only individual who has contributed to the mental health field. So when you say that, you really kind of sound a little ignorant. So just be mindful. And a lot of this is just language. We say things that we think we know that we really don't know. And then, so let's get over here in the church. So I talked about the basics, the different professionals. Well, let me go here first. I want to talk about mental health and mental illness because a lot of times we use those terms interchangeably, which that means we use them as synonyms. We use mental health and mental illness as that they mean the same thing, and they do not mean the same thing. Mental health is your basic overall well-being psychologically and emotionally. So mental health is your basic overall well-being psychologically and emotionally. A mental illness is something that can disrupt your mental health. See how I did that? So your mental health is your basic overall well-being psychologically and emotionally. Mental illness is something that can disrupt your mental health. A few mental illnesses that I can list that we may all be familiar with is generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and I try to list some in different categories. The DSM-5 stands for Diagnostic Statistical manual or diagnostic statistic manual. This is the tool that most professionals in the mental health field use to evaluate and assess if an individual meets criteria for a mental illness. I'm going to say that again. The DSM-5 is a diagnostic, statistical, or statistic manual. Mental health professionals use this tool to assess and evaluate clients, individuals that they're seeing doing talk therapy to see if they meet certain criteria for a specific mental illness. This book is probably about this thick. I'm serious. I got one in my office on my shelf. It's probably about this thick. And it has different categories of mental illnesses. It has personality disorders. It has those psychosis, different psychosis disorders. It has anxiety disorders. It has mood disorders. So it has, I think, what is it? I can't think of the category. I think it's neurological. I could be wrong, but it's basically like those affecting like the brain, like autism and ADHD. So there's different categories in the DSM-5. There's actually different types of anxiety disorder. OCD is considered anxiety disorder. Social anxiety. So if you're having, and I don't want to go into the criteria. So there's social anxiety, and then there's generalized anxiety. Okay, and then you have major depressive disorder. Then you have persistent depressive disorder. So there's different types, right? And you got bipolar 1 disorder, you got bipolar 2 disorder, and then you got bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features. So it is just an array of different mental illnesses in this particular book. So that's the tool that we use. So again, a mental health just means your overall well-being, psychologically and emotionally. A mental illness is something that disrupts your mental health. At any moment, we can have something that disrupts our mental health. And there are some moments too, I want y'all to listen to this. There are some times where an individual can have situational or circumstantial depression, or they can have situational or circumstantial anxiety. I'm going to give you an example. So when I was a sophomore in my undergrad in college, I had a period where I lost a lot of loved ones. And so I had got a recent news that a family member had passed away. And I went through a period after the funeral, after all that process, I had went through a period of circumstantial or situational depression. I would go to class, I would work, I was still functioning. I would go to class, I would go to work, and I would go to my room. I would close the door. And I was a resident advisor at the time, and my residents noticed that I had been different. And I remember one day coming from class, and I had all these notes on my board, on my door, saying, "Hey, I'm just checking on you and worried about you." And then some residents had got a card after my family member had passed, and they had slid it onto my door and signed it. And one had wrote a note saying, "I'm just worried about you. I haven't seen you. Don't leave your door open anymore." And so that's when I knew I needed to go talk to someone. And then another example I want to give, when I had my daughter, after having her, I had situational or circumstantial anxiety. I would get anxious around nighttime because I would wonder if she would sleep, if she was gonna sleep all night or not. And I can laugh at it now, but I remember I remember even asking my husband, because he said, "You get kind of nervous around the same time at night." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm nervous and wondering if she's gonna sleep all night." And that was at the beginning of adjusting to parenthood. And so I had to really talk to my husband, share my feelings, and be honest with myself and process my emotions and things like that. And I also had to be honest with my doctor when they asked me if I was experiencing any type of depression, anxiety, and things of that nature. And so those can be moments where we can have situational or circumstantial type of mental disruptions with our mental health. And so today I pose a question: is mental illness the church's business? And I want to know what you think. So if you are in the comments, I hope you liked, I hope you shared this. If you're in the comments, I want to ask you this question, if you're not afraid to answer: is mental illness the church's business? Is mental illness the church's business? Hey there, Lady Margaret, all the way from Arlington. Hey, Brother Isaac, so good to see you. I hear someone say, yes, it is. Mental illness is the church's business. Anyone else willing to comment? Do you think mental illness is the church's business? Because here's the thing. It's not when, no, it's not if someone encounters a mental illness in the church. It is when. So it's not if, but it is when. Thank you, Sister Tanichi. Mental health is absolutely the business of the church. I love it. I love it. We got someone tuning live on YouTube. So we are live on YouTube as well. So if you haven't liked or subscribed to my YouTube page, please do that as well. Someone said, yes, I believe that it is. Yes, I believe that it is. So why y'all comment? Keep on continue to comment. Keep on continue to comment. Continue to like and share. Is mental illness the church's business? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And I want to explain a couple of things that we need to look at as the church. There's a lot of talk in the church. I want to share this word, share with language. I want to share this word because sometimes we get wrapped up in language and we get kind of confused and we kind of get hung up. So in the I guess natural world, we say counseling, we say therapy. Ooh, don't nobody want to go to counseling. Don't nobody want to go to therapy. What do we say in our community? You go to therapy, that means you're gonna get labeled. Something's wrong. You know, what's the word we use? You crazy, right? So in the church, sometimes in the Christian realm, there's this word called deliverance used. So you have counseling over here and you got deliverance. What's the difference? I'm asking y'all some questions I want you to think. So what is the difference between counseling and deliverance? There's no difference. There is no difference. I love it, Tanisha. I might put this link in the thing because I really want people to jump on and share their thoughts. So if you hang tight, I'm not gonna be long. But what is the difference between counseling and deliverance? So deliverance, you are in the church realm setting someone free from something, from that something that's bound them, stronghold. But how does someone get set free without having knowledge first? Right? Same thing with counseling. When I get a client that comes in to talk with me, they're coming in because they have gained knowledge of something. I realize that I deal with rejection, or I realize I get anxious when it comes to school, or I realize I've been dealing with depression for the past year and it's hard for me to get out of bed, it's hard for me to take a shower. So this person has become aware. Love it. We'll definitely chat soon. I'll have to inbox you my number. So they have become aware that something is wrong. So acknowledging it is one thing. Acting on what you know is another, right? You ever talk to somebody, you ask them a question, it's like, oh, I know it. It is be right there on the tip of their brain or the tip of their mouth. But knowing it is one thing. You have to do something about it. You have to say something about it. So this has been the challenge with church and mental health, right? So in the church, it's easy for us, or it's easy for the pastor or minister or whatnot to say, come on up, get your physical healing. You've been dealing with a headache. You've been dealing with a backache. You've been dealing with this. You've been dealing with that. Come on and get prayer and get your healing. Because we can see the physical ailments, right? You go to a doctor, what they do x-rays. They do tests. There's some few instances where there's things going on in our body physically, and the doctor said, well, we did all these tests, and some of y'all may have those testimonies. I've been to this specialist, that specialist, and this is what happened. But most of the time, when it comes to physical ailments, there's an answer. There's evidence, right? We can see it. But a lot of times, when it comes to the mental health, there's a part of that equation that is not material. So when you're dealing with the soul of a person, you're dealing with a material world, stay with me, and you're dealing with an immaterial world. The material world is the actual brain. It's the actual brain. There's been research done. I remember when I took a trauma class and when I was getting my master's degree, I had to do a presentation on the waves in the brain, or the kind of the pathways in the brain, basically like the nerve pathways in the brain, how basically the nerve pathways connect to these neurotransmitters and things like that. Nowhere, I'm not gonna get onto all that, but I had did a presentation and I talked about how trauma can impact even the neural pathways in the brain. Basically, your brain is kind of like an electrical wire, kind of like the same way with your heart, electrical wire. There's a pulse. That pulse keeps the blood flowing, right? And then it's able to go to all the other parts of the body. And so the brain is kind of like an electrical system in our body too, as well. And so trauma can impact the brain and it can affect the neural pathways. So that's the material world we can see. There's people can do brain scans and they can look at. I also had read an article one time. There was a brain scan done on, I think it was a child who had been physically abused, and it showed how the brain was affected. They offered the child, they did it, it was the research, they offered the child psychotherapy, and then they did another scan on the brain after doing psychotherapy for a few months, and they could already see the brain almost transforming back as if it was never impacted. So the brain is a very complex organ. It has the power to be healed, and it has the power to even change. There's things that impacts it, right? Such as when somebody who uses a substance and they become addicted, there's changes that happen in the brain. And so that's the material part of our mind, our mental health, right? And then that's the immaterial part. So when I say immaterial part, is our likes, our dislikes, when we feel rejected, when we go through grief, when we go through trauma, when we deal with loss, how we dealt with this pandemic. Come on, somebody. I'm not trying to preach, but come on, somebody. And so our brain is heavily impacted by the things of life. And so our physical brain is impacted, thus, our immaterial part of us is impacted, the soul, the mind, the will, the emotions, all that is impacted. And so when we're looking at the church, a lot of times, I don't believe is that sometimes people don't want to know in the church. I just believe that sometimes we either disregard or we completely, I guess diminish or whatever things that we don't understand. And so I'm not a doctor, but if I'm having runny nose, coughing, sneezing, I can kind of self-diagnose that this might be a little minor cold. I'm gonna try to take some medicine, see if this clear up. Or this might be allergies. This is normally what I do when I have allergies. And so we can kind of almost self-diagnose. But what happens when somebody reaches a rough spot in their life? They go through a major transition or they go through a major traumatic event, and then they start having suicidal thoughts, and I can't stop these thoughts, and why am I having these thoughts? Where do these thoughts come from? And so there's this world out there, almost it's like we can't reach it, that we don't understand when it comes to the church. And so we try to put reasoning behind it, and a lot of times we have said things that have been hurtful. Excuse me, y'all, sipping my tea. We have said things that have been hurtful, or we've said things that have just not been the truth. That have just not been the truth. For instance, there's this, I guess, topic. Is mental illness influenced by demons? Is mental illness influenced by Satan? And there's a lot of things I could say about that. But one of the things that I want to encourage is there's a lot of Remember what I said mental health was? Your overall well-being psychologically and emotionally. And then a mental illness can be anything that can disrupt your mental health, right? And so if that is the case, think about it. If that is the case, if a mental illness is something that disrupts our mental health, grief can be an influencer. How many of y'all have lost a loved one, just lost a loved one? Whether you knew they was getting ready to pass and you were preparing, or whether you didn't know they was getting ready to pass and you was unprepared. So a lot of us, even in these past couple of years, have lost a loved one. So grief can impact or influence a mental illness. Trauma, oh my goodness, that's a topic all by itself. Trauma can impact or influence a mental illness or impact our mental health. Sorry. I said grief, trauma, this pandemic. I'm serious, this pandemic, because a lot of people thought they were good. And then the pandemic came, and really they weren't good, but they were able to use things in life to distract them. So they was able to use the work and the stuff with the kids, and even church. They was even able to use church. And and then when we all had to sit still, I'm even talking about myself. When I had to sit still, I realized there were some things that I still needed to work on and I needed to face as far as my emotional well-being. And then, I mean, there's all types of things. A divorce can disrupt your mental health. A sick child, who has a physical illness, can disrupt your mental health. There are so many things that it can influence. Now, I will say this because I'm a Christian, so I'm just going to say this from my biblical research that I've done. We do live in a world that is imperfect, and it was considered imperfect, or it was imperfect when there was the first sin committed that we know of, which was Adam going against the first commandment that God gave him: don't eat of this tree. So with that happening, we see the world kind of go upside down and go from being in equilibrium to not being in equilibrium, to having perfect harmony with God, to everything just kind of in chaos. So those are things that can impact the world we live in. Now, am I saying, hear me this, or hear me this, hear me say this? Am I saying that it's not possible for someone to be completely healed from a mental disorder or mental illness? I do believe that that is possible. As a mental health clinician, I have seen clients who maybe started on a significant amount of medication come off. But I never encourage a client to stop doing something if it's working for them. I let them make that decision. I empower them to make their own decision. I support them, and I provide a safe way. If they want to come off their medication, I give them a safe way to do it. It's all about safety. So I never, as a clinician, want to do anything unsafe. And so, yeah. So going back to looking at the church, there's a lot of things that can influence. Also, too, we don't talk about this, but biology, genetics. So if you have a mother or a father who has a mental disorder, depression, anxiety, bipolar, you are probably 50% more likely or 25% more likely to get that. Genetics. What do they do when you go to the doctor and you go into the emergency room? You see what they do. They ask you for your family history. Anybody got is a diabetic? Anybody have heart disease? Anybody got glaucoma in it? They ask you that. So if it is important in the physical aspect, then it is just as important in the mental health aspect as well. So there's a lot of things that can influence, and we have to be careful with these definitions and what they mean, because we say stuff because it's been said in the church and it really is incorrect, really. So we really have to watch our language. And so influence means it impacts or may persuade or may cause, but really there's a lot of things that can cause or disrupt someone's mental health. Okay. So there's a comment here. A lot of time in the church, we try to hide that we are dealing with these types of things. Why is it that we try to hide? Let's talk about that. Why is it that we try to hide? Talk to me. I'm actually going to put the link in the chat here. And for anybody who wants to come on, whether you are YouTube or Facebook, the question is, why is it that individuals hide what they are dealing with in the church? Because the church, we call it what? We call it a hospital, a place where those who are spiritually sick can go. So why is it when I'm supposed to be able to go to a place where, hey, well, the Spirit of the Lord is there's liberty? Why is it when I'm supposed to be able to go into a liberated place, I have to hide a part of me? When the word says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, that means with every part of you, I want you to love me. That's what God is saying. So I want you to love me in the fullness of your spirit and the fullness of your soul. And I even want it to be shown and evident even in how you live your life, how you interact in your body with your environment. So God wants us to love him with every part of us. So I don't know why in the church we think that I can be a little stern, I'm sorry. So I don't know why in the church that we think that you can come, but you hide that part of yourself. You can come, but don't be carrying on like that. Don't be, that, yeah, sister so and so, she dealing with depression, yeah, but we're gonna love on her. And, why is that? Why can't someone come and full? And I'm also talk to you about how you can help and how you can prepare yourself as an individual, maybe in the church when it comes to, excuse me, mental health and mental challenges. So I put the link. You can come on to this live now if you would like to. But I asked, why is it that people have to hide some of the things that they're dealing with in the church? Thank you, Sister Latrice, for sharing. She said, ashamed, because people are ashamed. Do you think if I'm ashamed, if I can't fully be myself at a place, you think I'm going to go there? I'm just asking. Well, I'm asking and I'm not asking. It's kind of a rhetorical question. But if I'm ashamed to be my full self at a place, why will I show up when it's not mandatory? Hmm? Why will I come when it's not mandatory? And I'm having these discussions because I want to lay it all out for us. Because I am, like I said, I'm a mental health therapist. I'm married to a pastor. My husband's assistant pastor of the church that we attend currently. And so I try to make sure that I'm mindful that, of course, that people don't have the education, the background that I do have. So I try to understand everybody's perspective from that lens. It can be kind of challenging for me how I work because I'm just thinking like everybody should know this, but everybody doesn't. And a lot of times we have been taught things in ways that are not biblical, but they were man-made traditions. And so because of honor and respect, we have carried on those traditions. But I pray in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray in the name of our Lord and Savior that those ways of thinking that have been oppressive, that those ways of thinking that have caused bondage to people, that have caused people not to be healed, that have caused people not to be delivered, to be walk fully in their walk fully, not just in their mental health, but their physical health. I pray against those right now in the name of Jesus, that door of bondage will be closed because that is not of God. Those ways of thinking are not of God. Those ways of doing are not of God because what it does is it keeps people in prison. And so we got to make up in our mind in this day and age, are we going to be a church that's a hospital or are we going to be a church that's a prison? So we got to figure out which one we're going to be. Are we going to be a church that's a hospital where you can come and get healing? You can cry out to God. You can come and be your full self and not be perfect and not be legalistic and not fit all the traditions. Or you're going to come and be in prison and feel like you have to fit this mold and you have to look this certain way in order to get what you need. Because I can tell you which one God is not at. Okay. So we have to be at the church that's going to be the hospital. We have to be the church that's going to be the hospital, not the church that's going to be the prison, that's going to keep on binding people up with our ways of thinking. And if you look in the Word of God, there is psychology that is there. All psychology is the study of people or man's behaviors, the ways of thinking, and their emotions. You can look out in the Bible and see some of the emotions David had. Look at Psalms. You can look in the Bible and see some of the emotions Moses had. He had a little temper. He didn't get to go into the promise and he got to see it, but he didn't get to go. So psychology is in the word of God. And I don't know why we try to separate mental health and the church or mental health and spirituality. They go hand in hand. They fit like a foot in a sock or a foot in a shoe. So we got to understand that. We got to realize that. So I know a lot of you who may be in the church, and again, I put the link in the chat. So hey, don't be scared. I'm gonna put the link in the chat again, but feel free to come on and just share your experience about maybe your experience with mental health or mental illness in the church. Maybe you had a loved one that was experiencing a mental illness. So here's a comment here. Some people are scared about the stigma that is attached to having these kind of issues. And she shared a family member of hers had a mental illness, and it has been found also in other generations of my family. Just like I said, it can be a biological or genetic component. Thank you so much for sharing that. But there is that stigma that don't want to be labeled, right? So we don't want to be labeled. We don't want to say, oh, she went to therapy, something must be wrong, or she taking medication, something must be wrong. But we don't say that about somebody is diabetic, somebody is going to dialysis. And then we use this kind of this word where God can heal all things. And the word does say, yeah, greater work shall we do. We, his people, his children, his disciples. So it's not about, yeah, God can heal all things, that this may be an ouch moment. Or we in perfect alignment to hear from God so these healings can take place. I'm just saying. And a lot of times I hear people say that as it relates to mental illness, but I don't hear people say that as it relates to physical illness. So you can be big, overweight, diabetic, heart problems, had 2 or 3 strokes. We don't worry about that. When it comes to mental illnesses, we just completely just shut down and we use this language that is so totally incorrect. I do want to address, before I don't want to keep you long, but I do want to address some ways or some methods that you can help someone or assist someone who do have a mental illness. Okay? So I do want you to think about some ways. Now, once again, there's a lot of different things that can influence a mental illness. But again, remember, we live in a imperfect world that was imperfect initially from someone sinning, based on my studies of the Bible and based on my studies of what I believe. Okay? And so because of that, there's a lot of things that have been entered into this world because of one man's decision to go against the commandment of God. So I do understand that component and I do agree with that component as well. But do I agree that mental illness and all mental illness is influenced by the devil or the enemy? Does that mean that a child who has autism is influenced by the devil? Does that mean a child who has ADHD is influenced by the devil? These are disorders that are in the DSM-5. That's in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So if we're gonna look at one, we gotta look at everything. Everything. So a lot of times things that we don't understand, we misinterpret. But it's important that if you are a leader in ministry, if you are a pastor, minister, whatever in ministry, deacon, whatever you are, deaconess, junior deacon, whatever you are, it's important that you get educated. I'm not saying go and get you a degree. I'm not saying that. That could take years. I'm saying you need to get some type of training, some type of information, some type of training equipment. I think every pastor need to be saying, "Hey, we're gonna train y'all on what happens when someone come in here and they in distress, or they emotionally in distress." Because I'm gonna tell you this: a lot of people, as much as I love what I do, I realize that a lot of people are going to the pastors first before they're going to a professional. And I even think that sometimes that's medically. Pastor, my ankle's been swelling and I don't know what's going on. What Pastor may say, hey, we're going to pray for you, but hey, you might want to go get that checked out. And so a lot of us are going to the pastor first before we go to a professional. And there's nothing wrong with that. Look, y'all, there's research to show that those who do attend church regularly, who have that community, who have that healthy support, it decreases their symptoms of depression and anxiety. There's research to show that. There has been plenty of research done on the church and the mental health that have been great. Church can be a great protective factor when it comes to those who maybe suffer with mental health. But we have to be informed and educated if we're going to serve in a healthy way. We don't want to do more harm than we do good. So let's say you have someone that comes up to you in church and they say, I've been dealing with these thoughts, and I don't know where these thoughts are coming from, and I just don't know what to do. And it all started, about 6 months ago when me and my family moved out here. I just want a fresh start, and I didn't know where to go, and it's just me and my boys and my mom here, and we're kind of alone, and I just don't know what to do. Of course, the pastor first. This is what I'm gonna say when it comes to helping. Never help somebody outside of your capacity. I'm going to say that again. Never help someone outside of your capacity. If you are in distress yourself, it's going to be very challenging for you to get the person, for you to even reason enough to hear and see what the person needs. It's really great if a church has a trained, licensed, certified counselor that they can just, say, hey, go to sister so and so, go to brother so and so. They're trained. Speak to them. I'm gonna check back in with them. I'm gonna check back in with you. Never, when you're helping somebody, never get them help and then don't check back in. Always check back in. You don't have to check in every day, but always check back in and just at least check back in. So I will say this. So that person coming to you, they have thoughts, they moved here with the boys, kids, but I'm just giving an example. First things first, most time pastor want to talk to you, I want to pray with you. Yeah, after you deal with the spiritual part, make sure you deal with the natural part. Okay. So, because sometimes it's not that prayer is not powerful, but sometimes that individual problems is not resolved after the prayer. Sometimes problems can be, and y'all, how many of y'all have prayed about something and you like, God, do you not hear me? You not hear me, God. I done prayed about this. Am I the only one? Please tell me I'm not the only one. How many of y'all have prayed about something? Those who believe in the power of prayer, how many of you have prayed and said, God, I need you to lift this? I need you to do something about this situation over here. And you feel like God is he's just dragging his feet. Okay, well, maybe I'm the only one. And so after you may have prayed with someone or counseled them, see if, hey, are you willing to talk to somebody? Thank you, Dakota. Thank you. See if they're willing to talk to somebody. See if they have professional help. One thing that ministries could be doing right now to prepare. Why you may not even be dealing with a lot of mental distress people. One thing that a ministry can do to just be prepared, I say have a mental health first aid kit. And I'm gonna tell you what you can put in your mental health first aid kit. Have a list of the resources in the community. So the community that you live in, Starkville, Columbus, Tupelo, Corinth, the community that you live in, have a list of all the mental health resources. Have a list. What community mental health places they have? Are there any private mental health places they have? A lot of times, individuals of color, Black individuals, they don't maybe have transportation, or they don't maybe have insurance. So this is something the church can think about. Do y'all have any funds that could help support them go to therapy? Something to think about, because a lot of times individuals of color or Black individuals, they don't want to go to therapy because they can't afford it, number one, and they don't have transportation, number two. And then it'll come along with all the stigmas and everything else, but a lot of times they can't afford it. That's why they do utilize the pastor. So those are some things to think about as far as your mental health first aid kit. Also, have a card or have cards with a suicide prevention hotline number on it, or just have the number in there, the hotline number in there, because you may have someone coming to you saying, I'm having suicidal thoughts, I have a plan, and if this happened, I'm gonna do it. And that's a crisis right there. So you need to see if that individual is willing to go to the hospital. Most of the time they go to the hospital, it could be a long process, but the hospital can evaluate them and see if they need to be put inpatient. Now, some of this may sound scary, but it's better for them to be inpatient if they know they're going to harm themselves than for you to pray and then you just leave them and then they go. So see if the person is willing to go to the hospital, and may say maybe you can go with them or whatnot. But those are just some options. Now, it's a whole nother situation when you're dealing with someone who has maybe psychosis or delusion or hallucinations going on. So if you have somebody who is experiencing a psychotic episode, that means they're seeing things that not everybody else is seeing, hearing things that not everybody else is hearing. They believe things that are not exactly to be true. Now, I will say this: I have had clients who had delusions that they sound real, but based on our relationship that we had built, I knew that they weren't real. And so when an individual is having that type of situation, it's important to get them maybe with somebody as soon as possible. So if most of the time, if these people are your church members, and you're having somebody who's maybe having a psychotic episode, they're family members. So it's important to try to reason them on the level that they are. I always tell people when somebody is having hallucinations and a delusion, it's real to them. So you telling them that is not real is not going to stop them from seeing or hearing or believing. And so think about it. If you think you really seeing something or hearing something, it's not going you tell them it's not real, it's not going to stop them from seeing or hearing it. So if you have a person in the congregation that you know that is having an episode, it's important to maybe know who their family members are. If you have a fear that they're going to be danger to themselves, it's important to call maybe the ambulance, call 911, let them know what's going on. And of course, I'm just giving you like a rundown, but I think every church should have what I call a mental health first aid kit. Mental health first aid kit. Have mental health resources numbers, have crisis numbers, have the suicide prevention hotline, all of them, have the domestic abuse hotline, have all those in the toolkit, because I will guarantee as much as you're in ministry, you're going to need it. And let's say you do have a member and you take them to the hospital, they get inpatient, or they have a psychotic episode or whatever. Because it could be people in your church that they could be taking medication. A lot of times, what I've seen individuals who've been on their medication, they become at a good stable level. What they do is they feel like, I feel good, I don't need to take my medication anymore. And so they can think they're good, they're okay, they don't need to take their medication, and so they'll stop taking it, and then thus the symptoms come back. But if you take medication, it's important to take it consistently as prescribed. It's important to take it daily. Well, like I said, it's important to take it consistently as prescribed. So, but yeah, are there any questions? I know I kind of did a little rundown, but are there any questions that you have? Are there any questions that you have? I know it's a lot of information, but I think it's really good for us to talk about language and for us to talk about different professions that are in the field and the mental health field and what is mental health and what is a mental illness. So it's important for us to, I think sometimes we just need to refresh and break this stuff down, because there's a lot of language that is used that is really incorrect. So I wanted to break down the language first. Yes, that is true. It's not good to start taking your medication on your own. Anytime I have a client that says, I'm taking medication, I want to get off, I said, okay. First, I asked them a few questions. How are you doing? Why you want to get off? Whatever. And I said, okay, this is what I'm referring you to do, or this is what I'm recommending for you to do. I want to recommend that you go talk to a doctor or the doctor who prescribed you, whoever prescribed the medication, that's who I tell them to go to. If you are still seeing this doctor, go to the doctor who prescribed the medication and tell them your desires of wanting to get off the medication. And most of the time, doctors, what they do is called titrate, which means they will slowly take you down the dosage before taking you off. Now, I've never known a doctor that just takes you off the medication. I've never known that, because there can be some side effects to doing that. And so if you try to stop taking it on your own, it can come with some severe side effects. So that's really dangerous to do that. So that's a very good point, Sister Margaret. It's not good to stop taking your medication on your own. Any other questions or comments that you want to ask or state? Any other questions or comments? If so, this is the place to ask. This is the healing room. We have healthy conversations. And like I said, I want this to be a place where people can come and get information. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know. So next month, while I'm letting people jump in and ask any questions you have regarding mental health in the church, is it the church's business? Yes, it's the church's business. How can you, as a clergy member, pastor, minister, whatever, prophetess, whatever you deacon, whatever you are, how can you prepare? Get you a mental health first aid kit. Create it. Get all the resources. You can have a bulletin in your foyer about all the just pamphlets. You go to different places and say, hey, we want to create a resource area for our parishioners. Can you please give us some pamphlets or whatever, brochures? They'll be more than happy to do that. See if you can connect with somebody in your community who may be a Christian as well, or who maybe would love to come and inform your members of the community about mental health. Try to connect and make a relationship with somebody in your community that can do that. See if you got somebody in the church that is trained and certified in mental health counseling and psychotherapy, to see if they can be like the person over individuals who may be having mental health or mental health challenges. Okay, so it's great if you have somebody already trained that can do that, because right now in the day and time, the pastor's doing everything. And remember, I said don't help outside of your capacity. And you probably thinking, what? But I've seen so many pastors and pastors' wives try to help somebody that they really don't have the capacity to help. And you may think, oh, I'm the pastor's wife. The Lord equipped me. Yes, but you're not God. You're not the Messiah. And so we all have a capacity. And our capacity can be based on our knowledge. It can be based on our education, based on what we know, based on our experience. Our experience could be a teacher. And so if you don't have the capacity to help somebody, then find somebody who does. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not having the capacity to help somebody. There have been clients that come to me. I'm going to be honest. There have been clients, and I've tried everything. And I'm like, look, we're going to try this. And if this don't help, then I'm going to have to refer you to maybe another level of care, because I want you to get what you need. And if I'm not what you need, then I want you to go and get it from whomever. That doesn't mean I'm inadequate. It just means that I'm wise and I know and I understand this is my capacity. You have professionals who are trained in trauma. You have professionals who are trained specifically in grief. You have professionals who are trained in addiction. I thankfully have had a little bit of experience in a lot of different areas. So yes, yes, yes. If you can not help, if the person that needs help is outside of your capacity, having someone who's suicidal, that can be, they can get your adrenaline pumping. Okay. So if that's not in your capacity, sit with them, call 911. If you're unsure, call 911. Okay. If you are unsure, call 911. Or I say, because sometimes 911, especially for individuals of color or Black individuals, be like, it's keeping it 100, but you may not call 911, but it may be a good idea to call the suicide prevention hotline for them to sit there with them while they talk to somebody and get them the help they need. The suicide prevention hotline, it has individuals who have been trained to handle crises of that nature. Okay. Sister Margaret, another good point. A lot of people who have mental illness are labeled as being lazy, out of control. That is so true. What you think about if all of our weaknesses is on display and people were able to label us based on our weaknesses? Ain't this something? And so why is it that we do it when somebody is in affliction, whether it be mentally, we just label them as all sorts of things. And we speak on their situation or circumstances that we have the full picture. A lot of times it is years and years and years built up of trauma and grief and everything. And so the big part is we really have to watch our language. We really have to watch our language. Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, if we have no questions, I want you to feel free. If you have anything you come to mind and you want to reach out to me via Facebook, I had some people who reached out to me via Facebook after I posted a few things, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate those comments and feedback. I love it. So if you have any questions for me, feel free. You can also reach out to me on my website. Remember, you can go down to the bottom and there's a request. That's what it is. It's a request information. So if you're saying, hey, we need to have some trainings in my job. We need to have some trainings in my department. We at our church, we had a mental health symposium last year in September. We had someone speak on medical health. We had someone speak on maternal health. We had someone speak on addiction, and then I talked about mental health in the church. And so we had someone from all the different aspects. And it's very, very important that we continue to have these conversations because what I'm realizing is there's still some individuals who have these beliefs. And I realize too that there are some beliefs that are just ingrained in people and people don't want to let go. They've believed it, they were taught it for so long and they don't want to let it go. And I think it's important to be able to agree to disagree agreeably, if that makes sense. And so, because there are people out there who are hurting, and you telling them they're going to go to hell for having suicidal thoughts, not going to let them open up to you and get the help that they need. Okay. So, if you have any questions, need any information, any requests, you can go to my website at the bottom of my page. That's my website address right here. And that's all I have, you all. So, you all have a blessed, wonderful night. And I pray that continual blessings be with you. And again, if you want to reach out to me on Facebook, feel free to do so as well. Okay. So, if nothing else, take care. And I'll see you next time on the Healing Room. Okay.